Too many great ideas, things that could enrich people's lives and really make the world a better place, have been ruined by people who believe in them failing to keep their shit together. I think if we're not careful, it's so easy to forget ourselves and for these passions to become obsessions. I was listening to an episode of this podcast I liked the other day, and there was this one phrase that really stuck in my head. Any value taken to the extreme almost always begins to undermine itself. And I think that's stuck in my head because it summed up so much of what I've been thinking lately. You see, from about 2012 to 2015, I was heavily immersed in New Age spirituality. It gave me something that up until that point in my life, I didn't really have. I'd grown up quite disillusioned with the world. I started to enjoy Radiohead at a young age, if that's anything to go by, and I've got Jehovah's Witnesses in the family, so there was like this sort of anti the way things are vibe there, obviously, as well. They're always talking about Armageddon, so pack your bags because the end is nigh and all this kind of stuff. And then a close friend of mine died in 2012, so all of that sort of came together at that point of my life. So there was something about New Age spirituality in general and also about the cult more specifically that I got involved with around that time as well. But I think definitely this is the case with New Age spirituality overall. It kind of gave me back that like childlike sense of wonder that I had lost in growing up so quickly with all the different things that happen in my life. And I think if you are a former New Ager watching this, like me, you'll probably relate to that a little bit. There's something of a childlike sense of wonder in the way that you see things from the New Age point of view, right? It's like this fascination with the world you find yourself in. Like everything is energy and we're all interconnected. And, if that's true, how beautiful is that, right? And even in the suffering and the pain, we're in that together. How is that not beautiful, right? But by 2015, that had kind of gone too far for me. The way that I saw things had changed in some ways, but also it had become more exaggerated in other ways. So I was thinking everything is energy, and this whole world, this whole existence is an illusion, and who I think I am isn't my true self. My true self is God, as is everybody's. So what I need to do is sort of just empty my mind to allow God to come through me in one way. That whole sort of non-dualism thing, right? And to each their own. But I think belief is one thing. That for me, it became more than that. It sort of was all encompassing in a way. And I do attribute that largely to having come out of the cult and been very much still in a cult mindset, but I didn't really believe in the leader anymore, so I needed a new thing to sort of fixate that on, to channel all of that absolute enthusiasm, it was zealotry, all of that on, right? And so, these days I've found a better place to integrate that enthusiasm in my life, and that's something that I do want to talk about on the channel, hopefully before Christmas. Subscribe to the channel if you want to see that as and when I do that. But for me, this whole way of seeing things, it was all encompassing, and so it was all that was important to me. So like, why worry about anything else? Why worry about anything at all? If life is an illusion and death is an illusion, then why bother? Why really worry about anything? Why feel like it's worth something having value for its own existence if it is in and of itself just energy, or just after the fact, after the important point, which is that everything is energy or everything is God, right? But no, I'd got that wrong, because this enchanted worldview, it was supposed to enrich my life. It was supposed to make my life worth living. It was supposed to make it richer and more enjoyable and brighter. But taken to that extreme, it was taking me out of the world. It was making me withdraw from the world I was living in. It wasn't doing what it was supposed to do anymore. It started to defeat itself. It had taken me out of the world and plonked me into one of my own creation, more or less, or one that was created by you pick a thought leader, a New Age leader or cult leader. It was created by those people, and I had taken it on as an escape from living in the real world and really being connected to myself as a human and having the human experience, you know? But I didn't clock that at the time, in like 2015 time. I actually ended up making another mistake in where I took things afterwards. I went from this kind of denial in the world to almost completely the opposite. It was a whole other extreme from 2015 to sort of 2020-ish. There's sort of a smooth gradient out of that. I ended up becoming quite entrenched in my own disillusionment. And I became fiercely skeptical, cynical even. And I've talked about that a fair bit on the channel before, so I won't repeat myself. There's other videos if you want to check those out. But it was like, now I had my feet on the ground, I didn't want to lift them up again. I didn't want to lose that now. Like, I found something that I could hold on to, and I didn't want to let go of it. But it's actually interesting saying that. There's an interesting metaphor, and now I've got my feet on the ground, I don't want to lift them up again, because like, that's how you walk. Like, that's how you move forward, is that you actually trust the ground's going to be there with every next step, but use that to explore things, right? And I don't think I hadn't figured that out at this point. It was like I'd sworn off a drug and I just wasn't going to touch it again. And as I have spoken about on the channel as well, that is part of a trauma response for me and my sort of story, if you like. So yeah, there's a video on that if you want to check that out. But, you know, I'd been involved in this thing. It ravaged my mental health. It really turned my whole life upside down, the cult thing. And New Age was a big part of that. So I just wanted nothing to do with it anymore. In the beginning, this skepticism, it was allowing me to reclaim my life from all of this sort of cult stuff and this New Age fluff, right? And it was supposed to allow me to sort of reorganize my thoughts and allow me to, you know, get more down to earth with my beliefs. And I was really reserved about my opinion and my belief forming for a while, and it was like a breath of fresh air for a while, and then it went on from there. But to be completely fair to myself, I think when you're sitting in front of a camera like this and you're talking to people on YouTube, there is almost like a crystallizing effect in that desire to be consistent with your audience and stuff. So I think that the more I said, the more I did, the more I became entrenched in certain ways of thinking. And it was like I wanted to be consistent, but I wasn't allowing myself to evolve and change in how I was seeing things. So I ended up becoming more and more rigid, more and more dogmatic in my own way, you know? I was also in a community of people who shared my values in a lot of ways, and we were speaking and thinking about things in a very similar way as well, which has that sort of effect of social reinforcement, you know. So I was very much becoming slowly, and definitely through choices I was making, although I don't think I was always aware that I was making those choices, gradually becoming more and more extreme in my position. Even though in my mind I was thinking I'm open-minded, you know, I don't actually think I was. So quite quickly I ended up becoming dogmatic all over again, but this time it was from like the other side of the room, right, to the spiritual stuff. Now I was a staunch atheist, I was a skeptic and very cynical and so on. So when it came to skepticism, the way I talked about it was that I'd sort of raised the bar on what I was willing to accept as true. But I think in all the sort of the passion of it all, I kind of forgot the nuance between saying something like, I don't accept that that's true because that doesn't meet my personal standard of like evidence or whatever, versus, you know, my standard of truth is the only acceptable one, so you're wrong. You know, I think there's a humility in that first approach that's lacking in the second, and an arrogance in the second which isn't present in the first. So this healthy skepticism, it was supposed to help me to understand things better and to sort of uncover truth in things, but it wasn't doing that because I wasn't like actually allowing myself to explore things. I wasn't being generous enough, charitable enough when I was exploring these things. Especially in those cases where what I was looking at were based on different values or a different worldview from my own, different sort of starting points of how truth or knowledge can be acquired and how certain perspectives can be worthwhile believing in, even if we disagree about whether they're true or not. But here's the thing. Over the years, throughout both of these different ways of seeing things, what I've really been looking for, I think, is like a structural understanding of the world. And I think whichever way you go, if you're looking for something like that, like a real like worldview that fits together and sort of makes sense and is coherent, cohesive in and of itself, if you're looking for something like that, that will start to defeat itself if it gets taken to the extreme to which it becomes dogmatic and rigid. For me, I think it defeated itself when I started to close my mind to what was outside of my framework of reality, what I could imagine was true. That was true of my atheist period, and it was also true of my spiritual period as well. I think that brings me back to what I was saying at the beginning of the video. You know, any value taken to the extreme almost always begins to undermine itself. And I think as humans, we can get so enamored with our ideas, so overcome with passion and enthusiasm about our beliefs, and we get invested in them, and so these ideas, we sort of begin to attach them to parts of our identity as well, which makes us even less likely to be open-minded when we hear another point of view, you know. And I think if we're not careful, it's so easy to forget ourselves and for these passions to become obsessions. And so in the end, I think we run the risk of becoming mouthpieces for ideology and devoid of honest individuality, and in the crossfire, just incredible ideas, just really cool ideas that are fantastic and could really make a positive impact on the world, get kind of ruined. You know, in principle, these are great ideas, but our enthusiasm becomes obsession and we take things way too far. And then these ideas are executed horribly. They play out in the world in just these really awful ways when the intentions are, you know, gold. But the path to hell is paved with good intentions. I think that's part of the problem here, in that we think because we've got good intentions, to take it to that extreme is justified, you know? And so we end up shooting ourselves in the foot. But what I think is needed is an integrated, nuanced value set where we can recognize the allure of the certainty of dogmatic and extreme thinking, because it has an allure, doesn't it? The idea of feeling certain about something, there's a certain allure to that. It can help you feel more stable in the world. It helps you feel like things are more predictable. You can explain things. I don't think the allure of that the appeal of that can be understated. But I think if we don't recognize that when it comes to, you know, having these ideas and trying to find ways to implement them in the world, or, you know, live by them in our own personal lives, if we don't remember that there is that allure, there is that appeal, if we're not careful, that can sort of take over when it comes to actually living by these things, then it will take over and we will lose ourselves, and great ideas will get ruined by our enthusiasm for them. Because I think too many great ideas, things that could enrich people's lives and really make the world a better place, have been ruined by people who believe in them, failing to keep their shit together and rise above their own whatever it is that's going on for them, and actually doing something worthwhile with that, you know? So much so that I think it's really easy to lose sight of the whole point of that thing in the first place. Which brings me to something that I wrote on my Instagram, which I think sums this up fairly concisely. Respect your own ideas enough to not let your enthusiasm butcher them. Whenever I put out a video like this, most times I upload some extra content that goes along with it over on my Patreon, which usually includes stuff that I couldn't include in the actual video, sometimes because of time constraints, and sometimes because YouTube doesn't like you talking about certain things on the platform. So if that sounds interesting to you and you want a bit of extra content from me whenever I put one of these videos out, then please consider checking out the Patreon. There's a link to that in the description and on the end card in just a second. Otherwise, I'm Andy Fellows, and this channel is about thinking for yourself in the face of cults, destructive spirituality, and toxic online culture. Please be kind and ask good questions, and I'll see you in the next one.